There are shadows in every family, but in this one, those shadows have names and traumatic pasts. Charles is strolling down a road where the cold and the inherent warmth of blood collide. Unwavering foundation of his pledge, he is no longer merely a brother. He is the protector of a tenuous continuity. In the echoes of the past, we have witnessed this surgical precision. The Duke of Windsor became a ghost in 1936 when the family decided to put the institution's existence ahead of one man's wishes. This weighty. London is not the only place where stillness exists. When King Felipe of Spain gave up his father's inheritance to uphold the dignity of his people, he experienced his own public anguish. A unique form of strength is needed for this lonely, chilly viewpoint. The public seldom witnesses the quiet martyrdom that true leadership frequently demands. Prince Andrew's presence is a constant that weighs heavily on the monarch and his heir. Standing between 1,000 years old, they are the steel shield. Legacy and the controversies that could bring it to an end, they lack the freedom to be adaptable and the luxury of private forgiving. Charles and William must maintain their firmness while others can afford to be softer. In order to keep the shadows firmly outside the palace gates, they are maintaining the queue. The cost of stability is their sacrifice. The house's ability to decide between the basic pull of the heart and the heavy burden of responsibility is crucial to its survival. February 19th ought to have been a day of introspection, maybe over a cup of tea in a family home under surveillance. Rather, no royal title could dispel the icy clinical weight of the morning at Wood Farm. This milestone brought Andrew the harsh reality of a life that has been surgically truncated rather than the warmth of celebration. At this point, the man's birthday became a silent day of reckoning as the shadow eventually overshadowed him. The transition from the 30 rooms of Royal Lodge to the small, drafty nooks of a farmhouse is a long one. Not just miles, it is an obvious, painful decline. With a fatigue that penetrates their bones, Charles and William have witnessed this gradual disintegration. A landscape of shattered trust that they did not build is being cleaned up. However, the public humiliation resulting from these choices must fall on them. The king is doing more than just moving a brother. He is operating on his own family tree, a painful but necessary procedure. Where status used to be comfortable, there is now a framework that necessitates millions merely to maintain isolation and minimal security. It's not a home, this farmhouse. It's an exile. It is the outward sign that he has been removed from the collective memory of an organization he used to work for. The family experiences the amputation of a leg that just would not heal, while the public witnesses a relocation. The walls of this historic mansion are a sobering reminder of how far one can fall when pride overrides the sacredness of the family name. For a house that has to give up its own blood in order for to live, it is a heavy, silent winter. How much longer can the king bear the weight of a sibling who won't acknowledge the consequences of his own shadow? There's something very heavy about the silence of the Norfolk countryside. Grand machinery that once sustained a prince has been reduced to its most basic clinical elements inside these walls. The presence of almost 30 employees softened Andrew's environment for decades. According to the Mirror, that busy group has already disappeared, leaving only 3 members of the skeleton crew in their place. The physical erasure of a past life is shown by this startling reduction. In order to prevent the family's future from being tarnished by previous scandals, Charles and William are acting with the dexterity of surgeons cutting ties. The cold imperative of survival has been exchanged for the luxury of sentiment. However, his siblings have made a different decision, while the king must continue to be iron. According to Express UK reports, this obligation has quietly shattered a family. While Princess Anne and Prince Edward have taken on the duty of the sympathetic guard, while Charles looks after the fortress. At a recent dinner, they addressed the frail man beneath the titles, putting aside the public humiliation. They discovered a sibling sliding further into a deep despair, caught in a perilous hallucination of future vindication. Charles can no longer cross the bridge that is Anne and Edward. While the king maintains the doors of state, they are maintaining the channels of blood. Bolted firmly. This is the contemporary monarchy's silent martyrdom. Now that duty and mercy have their own chambers, they watch the same quiet deepen every day. When the cost of a family's survival is the utterly devastating isolation of one of their own, can a family ever achieve true peace? Beatrice and Eugenie bear a heavy burden as the agony of this breakdown reverberates through the generations. They tread carefully for years, acting as a silent shield for a father they want to trust in. Daughterly allegiance now seems more like a burden they were never supposed to bear than a decision. These ladies are more than just daughters. They are mothers shielding the next generation from the consequences. It is a silent, heartbreaking betrayal to discover that their affection was possibly utilized as a public relations shield. They are negotiating the ruins of a childhood hero who put their own children's safety over the preservation of a tarnished legacy. Even Prince Edward, a man whose existence is founded on the silent pillars of duty, has reached the end of his tolerance. The customary royal shroud of silence was finally lifted during his most recent trip to Dubai. He refrained from using ambiguous family platitudes or the customary diplomatic consolations. Rather, the family's moral compass was permanently altered by the precision with which Edward spoke. He put the emphasis where it has been for years by acknowledging the lives destroyed as a result of these scandals. He essentially shut the door by paying tribute to the victims, on any semblance of fraternal protection that may yet exist. The institution has at last acknowledged that the only way to achieve even a semblance of redemption is via honesty. Pride cannot be preserved because it is a required clinical cleaning of the air. Now, in a house where the truth has finally triumphed over the legend, the sisters stand in quiet. No child should ever have to carry the burden of their father's decisions. We are seeing an era's last sunset. The royal name was used for centuries as an unseen haven that could endure any worldly storm, a whispered assurance of safety. Now that he understands that a new form of strength based on transparency rather than shadows is needed for the crown to survive in the current era, Charles is removing that old cloak. The untouchable monarchy is coming to an end. The king is not just cutting back on the family budget, according to reports about his intentions for a leaner institution. He is hunting the circle of trust to its most fundamental, unbreakable core. He's shaping a framework in which the real burden of the thousand-year legacy rests solely with the king and his direct heir. The only way to make sure Prince George doesn't inherit the humiliation of his predecessors is to implement this lonely, frigid design. In order to preserve the honor of a grandson who is still playing in the palace gardens, Charles is going through the personal suffering of a brother's banishment. In order to make room for the future, he is slicing through his own heart. A concentrated collaboration between parent and daughter is taking the place of the vast, disorganized web of the past. And son, a man who is aware of the vulnerability of his home, made this decision out of calm, desperate need rather than out of rage. He is aware that another controversy can be the ultimate blow that shatters the foundation. The world in which immunity was granted by a title has long since disappeared. Only those who demonstrate that they are deserving of the burden of service will now hold the crown. Charles is demonstrating that a king must occasionally lose a brother in order to save a kingdom by constructing a fortress of duty. The high price of this. The wrinkles of fatigue on his face bear the mark of sacrifice. While Prince Edward and Princess Anne bear a burden that is not visible to the cameras, Charles is the only guardian of the state. They navigate the precarious area between the unvarnished reality of their own blood and the iron demands of the monarch. They report to a king who can no longer afford to turn around, acting as silent messengers. This silent allegiance is a required act of kindness for a soul lost in the kingdom, not a rejection of the king's desire. Shadows. Siblings are the pulsating heart that lies beneath the family's stern institutional facade. They make sure that a brother's banishment does not result in the complete eradication of a human being. We are seeing the deep division between an enduring institution and a live family. While one holds the hand of the fallen, the other must do everything in their power to preserve the legacy. It's a lonely, tiresome, tightrope walk, and it's assessed by a world that doesn't often witness the personal tears. Drawing invisible lines is particularly painful when our deepest emotions are at odds with our values. The king and his siblings are teaching us that it is possible to show someone clemency while still vehemently denouncing the course they have chosen. Few people could bear the weight of such a choice without crumbling. Your opinions on how a family might recover when responsibility requires such a large cost would be greatly appreciated. Your viewpoint is the lifeblood of this channel, so please share your knowledge in the comments. If these tales resonate with you, I cordially invite you to participate in our circle by loving and subscribing to this video.